First, let me express my gratitude to our ambassador and to the good people at Lisbon. This is to show you that research on Magellan does not only take an archive, does not only require research in the Spanish archive, but also research in your own archive. I did much of my work at the Archivo General de Indias, just look at the documents. And also, later on, I realized that there are also a lot of very, very useful materials from your own archive, the Torre de Tombo, especially on the Battle of Mactan. So I think this is the first time that historians would now rely, and I did much rely on these particular documents from your own archive. This is from the Torre de Tombo archive. Of course, just to say to you about Magellan, we always had a notion that Magellan is a soldier and therefore has a physical characteristic of a warrior or a soldier, a big guy. But when I was looking at certain documents, I realized that Magellan was not the typical soldier that we have always known. He was short, probably 5-footer or even less, and he was not even walking straight. He was limping. Because at one time when he fought in the battle in North Africa, a certain bullet shattered his leg, and therefore, since then, he was already crippled, one part of his leg. I'll say something very, very briefly about my talk, just to comply with the time requirement. That I talk about the Battle of Mactan, and you always associate the Battle of Mactan as simply a clash of two people. But you have to understand, in my talk, I would like to emphasize this thing, that it's a battle of two principles. The native way of looking at the world, and the Spanish way of looking at the world. The other thing I would like to emphasize is about Magellan. Magellan is a Portuguese. And here you will see that Magellan actually was killed by the Filipinos, abandoned by the Spaniards, but died as a Portuguese. And died for a Portuguese. Something that you probably have not read in any book. That was the island of Mactan, of course. Here is Lapu-Lapu. We have a notion that Lapu-Lapu, in all the monuments, paintings, movies, that he was a young man. But when I did my research, based on the document of Gaspar Correa, who was a Portuguese, he was actually an old man. He was 70 years old when he fought with the soldiers of Magellan. So it's changed the whole of our 500-year history. We have always glorified Lapu-Lapu as a young fighter, when in fact he was an old fellow. The other thing that we have, that's why, by the way, there is an artist who created a new painting of Lapu-Lapu. He was now an old man, based on the book that I wrote. Inspired by that, he changed the whole image of Lapu-Lapu, now an old fellow. The other thing that I would like to say is, Lapu-Lapu actually did not resist the Spaniards. Lapu-Lapu actually accepted Charles, he accepted Magellan. The only thing that he cannot accept is to kiss the hand of Raja Humabon, his actually opponent, another chieftain whom he was at war for a long time. But ironically, when I did again a research on this material, they were actually related to each other. Humabon and Lapu-Lapu were brothers-in-law. Apparently, one of the issues had something to do more with family problem. I think the reason is why is it that Lapu-Lapu hated Humabon is because it appears that Humabon gave up the sister of Lapu-Lapu for a younger wife, sorry. The other thing has something to do with economics, more of a collection of port taxes in some way, because if you look at the map, they were actually, Mactan and Cebu were very, very close to each other. And whenever foreign vessels would pass through the strait there in Cebu, Lapu-Lapu would demand taxes from the foreign vessels, and therefore they won't refuse anymore to pay taxes to Cebu, to Magellan. These are some of the images that we have in 1875 when the Spaniards began constructing the monuments for Magellan. And so they thought that they found the graveyard of Magellan, and this is how it looked like at the time. We don't really know whether it was really true that they really found the graveyard of Magellan, because there were earlier attempts to really know where the exact spot was, but they could not find any evidence where Magellan really was buried or where he was killed in the battle. But let me just dwell on this particular thing, that why is it that Magellan, in a way, how was the battle fought? We always thought that the Spaniards and even the Portuguese were, in a way, very, very cruel. They didn't like the native people. They will simply attack them and kill them. I think that's a very, very elementary notion of the European powers in the 16th century. You have to understand that Europe at the time, Spain and Portugal, were among the leading superpowers and probably among the more civilized, so to speak, in the 16th century world. Magellan did not actually attack immediately, contrary to the ordinary stories we have, that Magellan simply attacked Lapu-Lapu because Lapu-Lapu would not accept the sovereignty of Human. That's not actually as simple as that. You have to understand that when the Spaniards went to the Philippines, they were actually carrying a new mandate. A new mandate. They learned so much lessons from South America that if you use very, very hostile method, you will also receive hostility from the natives. And for that reason, by 1500s, Spain had to revise their policies of treating the natives. And one of the example of that was the theory, was the moral doctrine of Fray Bartolome de las Casas. And Las Casas was giving all this, was protesting against the abuses of the Spaniards in South America, and for that reason, certain laws had been issued by and approved by the King of Spain. For example, the Leyes de Burgos of 1512 or 1513, which really changed in a way which ameliorated, which actually mitigated the abuses committed by the Spaniards towards the Indians. When I was looking at for example, the cargo of Magellan, the Archivo General de Indias, all the details of the cargo of the expeditions were there, and I was surprised to know that a large portion of the cargo were classified as dadivas, as you probably know. Dadivas were giveaways. I think the whole idea is that they have to make use, to exhaust all peaceful means, friendly means, to win the natives rather than to use force. And so Magellan carried so many giveaways, gifts for the natives. That's one thing that shows that apparently there was a certain change in the policy of the Spaniards towards the treatment of the natives. The other thing that you have to understand, why we say that Magellan did not immediately use force, and apparently Magellan hates, so to speak, to use force unless it was actually all peaceful means had been exhausted, was because of the fact that they were governed by two other things. They demand to use the so-called requerimiento. In the 16th century, Spaniards were required to make use of what you call the rules of engagement. You cannot just attack anybody. You have to tell them that this is what we wanted to do. If you refuse to do this, then that's the time that we will attack you. But again, it's not as easy as that again. Because before you can even use force, you have to have a justifiable reason for force. The so-called jus bellum, the law, the justice of war. That you cannot just engage in war because you don't like the faces of these people, you don't like the behavior. No. There must be sufficient reason to use force. And what can that be? The course to the so-called issue of reconquista. Only in cases when you are confronted with Muslims, with Islamic religion, that you can immediately use force unless the people would immediately submit. So that's one thing. The idea of reconquista should be considered as a major feature even in the colonization of the Philippines. I think, again, many historians fail to look at this record in the Archivo General de Indias. before Magellan left Cebu, King Charles issued his so-called 75 Instrucciones, 75 instructions, where he laid down all the policies of Spain that Magellan should implement. And one of them is that he must exhaust all peaceful means. And for that reason, when would you be allowed to use force? As I said, if a Muslim leader refused to accept Spanish sovereignty, that could be employed outright. But then, that is not the case in Mactan. In fact, records would show that Magellan first employed the requerimiento. Told the people there of Mactan, okay, we will attack you if you don't give. But it did not end that way. Even if Lapu-Lapu consistently refused to kiss the hand of Brother Mahon, again, Magellan had to resort to peaceful means. The last time he did this, instead of sending a full-scale attack on Mactan, he burned a small settlement just to warn them that, okay, we really meant business. And if you don't accept this, then that's the last time that we will use force. So this attack on Mactan in April 27 was, of course, the last that Magellan could afford to allow Lapu-Lapu. So in this particular sense, there is a certain issue there about how the Spaniards implement colonialism in Southeast Asia. It's a new whole world of colonialism, not the kind of colonialism that they did in South America, because I said they learned the lesson. Finally, I will say something about Magellan. Magellan was killed by the natives. He was abandoned by the Spaniards. Why? It appears to me that the Spaniards were still haunted by their suspicion that Magellan remained very, very Portuguese. What evidence? Magellan actually was only allowed 25 Portuguese to join the expedition. In fact, the Spaniards were very, very keen on this. They would really examine who were joining. In fact, some Portuguese had to adopt Spanish names just to conceal their Portuguese identity. And for that reason, Magellan apparently added more. That's why it's very, very difficult to fix the real number of the members of the expedition. Because Magellan apparently listed this number, but he actually concealed other people there. Most likely, Portuguese. The reason? Apparently, Magellan had faith on his fellow Portuguese. He knew that the danger at sea is not through the water. The danger at sea is to people, mutinies. And he knew he can count on the support of his fellow Portuguese. And in a way, he was right. You have to understand that Magellan, as I said, he was haunted. The Spaniards were haunted by their suspicion that Magellan was true and true Portuguese. That's the reason why there were mutinies, at least 2 mutinies, because the Spanish hidalgos were suspicious of what was really Magellan's purpose in the expedition. They always suspected that Magellan was there and remained to be Portuguese, and he wanted that the expedition should fail so that Spain will be embarrassed. So when the Battle of Mactan erupted, the Spaniards apparently deliberately abandoned Magellan. But why did he die? If you consider Magellan, he was fully armored. I look at the cargo. Magellan was among the soldiers who was fully armored. They were fully equipped with the most sophisticated advanced weaponry of the 16th century against 1,500 natives who were only armed with bamboos, with barely having any artillery. But why did Magellan die? He was a veteran soldier, fully armed with weapons. He died because of sentimental reason. What was that? There was a young man in the crew named Cristobal Rebelo. Cristobal Rebelo was a native of Oporto. I checked the family background. He was from Oporto. And this was it. He was supposedly the bastard son of Ferdinand Magellan. And when the battle was raging, this man was being ganged up by a number of natives. And so Magellan, according to a document, he ran like a madman just to defend his son. And both of them died in the battle. The Spaniards left them, so only few died. There were only about 7 of the Spaniards, including Magellan and Rebelo. 4 natives who were converted to Christianity died with them. There were only 15 natives who died. For that reason, apparently the battle was not the kind of battle that they always envisioned of 1,000 people fighting. It must have been a small, really, a small battle with all a small number of casualties. And that's precisely why I would say Magellan remained Portuguese and died for the Portuguese. Quite ironical, after the death of Magellan, Hernan Cortes, the governor of Mexico, even sent a letter to the next expedition. The letter was addressed to the chieftain of Cebu, telling him, good for Magellan to have died because he disobeyed the king. Good for him to die because God apparently punished him for that. Imagine, he was disowned even after his death by the Spaniards. And for that reason, apparently, the reason is because the Spaniards still were haunted by their suspicion that Magellan was not working for them. Thank you very much.